Tonight, after the biggest ever Israeli attack on its territory, Iran vows revenge and says Israel has made a declaration of war. Israel damaged one major nuclear site and assassinated military leaders and nuclear scientists in what was described as an act of self-defense. Sign the nuclear deal before there is nothing left. Donald Trump's plea to Tehran as he warns of even more brutal attacks to come. The tit-for-tat strikes came after the United Nations Nuclear Authority said Iran had stockpiled enough enriched uranium to build 9 nuclear bombs. Retaliation from Tehran could be imminent. We'll assess how what happens next could have a truly global impact. That's all coming up on this special edition of The World with me, Jonathan Samuels. Hello, good evening and welcome to this special edition of The World with me, Jonathan Samuels. The attacks began in the hours before dawn. First came the explosions as missiles descended. Israeli jets carrying bunker-busting bombs targeted nuclear facilities and military sites. At least 3 of Iran's most senior generals were assassinated in their homes. Well, that was all part of a 3-pronged attack which has, in the words of Iran's president, ignited the flames of war as the world looks on. Tehran says at least 78 people, including children, have been killed. And even as Western leaders urge de-escalation, Israel is continuing its assault, insisting it is acting to eliminate an imminent nuclear threat. So, how will Iran respond? What does this mean for Iran's nuclear hopes? And how could consumers all around the world be affected? We'll aim to answer all of that over the next 60 minutes. But let's get started with our first report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
Israel's operation began shortly after 3 a.m. on Friday morning. Targets in Iran's capital, Tehran, were some of the first to be hit. 200 Israeli aircraft took part in the opening hours, hitting around 100 targets, including leaders of the Revolutionary Guard and nuclear scientists. With Iran's air defences mostly destroyed, they carried out wave after wave of attacks throughout the day. Israel's Prime Minister justified the operation as a fight for his country's very existence.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
The key nuclear facility in Natanz, where uranium is enriched, was hit multiple times as Israel tried to penetrate the chambers deep underground. Iran said that civilians, including children, were killed in some of the strikes and vowed to retaliate.
This barbaric act that violated all international commitments confirms the criminal nature of the illegitimate Zionist regime that has based its existence on occupation, aggression and killing children.
Missile launches in Iran were also targeted. Mid-morning, Iran launched 100 drones towards Israel, but they were all shot down before they reached Israeli airspace. A much larger retaliation is still expected. In an extraordinary covert operation, Mossad spies operating deep inside Iran took out ballistic missile sites from the ground, using their own drones smuggled into the country in preparation. It has limited Iran's ability to hit back. Israel has warned that the operation could continue for days, possibly weeks, depending on Iran's response. It is a dangerous moment for the Middle East. The region is on edge, but Iran has few allies coming to its defense. World leaders have urged de-escalation, but Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu see this as an historic opportunity to destroy Iran's nuclear program and maybe even the regime itself. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
Well, in the last few moments, we've heard from the Israeli military saying it has identified missiles launched from Iran heading towards Israel. So Israeli military saying its defence systems are operating to intercept the threat. Of course, Iran did retaliate in the early hours of this morning, sending many drones towards Israel, but now a further retaliation is on the way. Let's go to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who's in Jerusalem. Alistair, what more can you tell us?
Well, only that, again, we have had the alert system on the phone. I was explaining that the Israelis now have the capability of basically taking over the entire cell network in a moment of national emergency to send out a warning to everybody in Israel that there is an incoming threat. Now, that has happened a couple of times today. It happened twice in the early hours of this morning as those Israeli attacks happened in Iran. The expectation being that Iran would respond immediately. They didn't. And then it happened for a third time about an hour ago, but nothing has happened. The Israeli military spokesperson was giving a briefing from the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv. I'm just being told that there might be something in the air. I'm just keeping a lookout for air defences. Yeah, I can see now just a solitary... No, there's a couple of air defences coming up now. No booms of interceptions, but if ballistic missiles have been fired from Iran, it takes only a matter of minutes for them to arrive here. Yeah, so there's a couple of interceptions, but no sirens have sounded yet, I should say. We've had the alert on the phone telling people to stay close to bomb shelters, as people will now be doing. But there are no alerts, no sirens. Normally, you'd expect sirens to start sounding around Jerusalem and around central Israel, like Tel Aviv. But I can see just a couple of, they look like sort of comets almost in the dark night sky going up there. And then you'd normally hear the boom of an interception. But none of that at the moment. And it seems to be, at the moment, fairly limited. So we'll just keep an eye out on that. But, the reason the alerts were sent out on the phone was because missiles had been detected being launched from Iran. And that is, of course, what everybody has been expecting all day, for the Iranians to launch a major response. Let's just wind back. October 2024, Iran launched 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. And that was a major, major event. And the expectation was that something similar would happen this time around. So I think the Iranian regime has been in some disarray today, reeling from the attacks that the Israelis have carried out in waves throughout the day. I can see just behind Jerusalem's Old City a number of interceptor missiles rising to the sky there. Two count. I don't know whether you can make them out on the camera. They're really just streaks of light. You can see one's now got a sort of a streak of flames behind it. As I say, they look a little bit like comets rising up into the sky. It can be very at night time. And this is, the third Iranian attack on Israel that I have experienced. April last year, October last year, and now. And of course, we've had a lot of attacks from the Houthis, from Hezbollah as well, from Hamas. And at night time, it can be very difficult to get your bearings and to understand sort of the geography of what's going on. So sometimes, these interceptors and these missiles can seem as though they're very close, but actually it's happening much further away. It's very difficult to understand exactly what is going on. More interceptors now coming sort of kind of from northern Jerusalem. And still, I have to say, no sirens sounding. Loads more coming over the top of me right now. I don't know whether Finn can pick it up on his camera. We can see them. I've heard no booms of interceptions, but I can see a whole series of the Israeli interceptions into the skies. Now, we talk about the Iron Dome a lot. That is, I suppose, there we go, the siren's now sounding. We talk about the Iron Dome. That is a missile defense system, incredibly effective, but really most useful against the sort of missiles that Hamas have in their stockpile and Hezbollah. When it comes to ballistic missiles, which is, I think, what we are looking at now, it's a different system called the Arrow system, and also they've got the David Sling system as well, and they can engage ballistic missiles that come in much, much faster, much, much higher up in the sky as well, and carry a far heavier payload. So it's a different system that they use to intercept, but has been very effective. You've also got the American THAAD system, which is in Israel at the moment to provide an extra layer of defense. Let me just let you listen to what's going on here. You might be able to hear the thud of interceptions as well. So just to recap, we are now experiencing what we think is an Iranian ballistic missile attack on Israel, something that has been expected ever since Israel launched those first waves of the strikes against Iran at around 3 a.m. this morning. Now the sirens have stopped. That normally is an indication that the threat is over. I can see sort of the fire of some debris over to the east, sort of across the West Bank towards the hills, towards the Jordanian mountains, falling quite rapidly. One of the biggest threats when ballistic missiles are incoming, and we experience them really very regularly here because of the Houthis, but the Houthis normally fire one, sometimes two at a time. With Iran, we could expect there to be many more than that. I'm seeing more interceptors going to the sky now, so perhaps the threat is not over. But one of the real concerns is falling debris from the interceptions. When they are intercepted mid-air, that debris can fall, and that is a real threat to people who are not seeking shelter. Okay, so we're just looking at the streaks of what we think are interceptors. It's incredibly hard at night time to understand what is an incoming missile and what is an outgoing interceptor. And often the sky is alight with these missiles right above us. You can see the streaks there, very, very bright. Now, the assumption is that they will be big flames in the sky. The assumption is that the targets will be, and I'm just going to move here because it looks as though some of them are coming down to the ground pretty hard. The assumption is that the target would be Tel Aviv, military bases, but of course in Jerusalem you have the Israeli parliament and the seat of government as well. And so I think it's realistic to assume that that could also be a target for Iran. I'm just trying to get some detail on, okay, I'm getting a message from the Israeli military telling me that dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles are en route to Israel. Now, dozens, whilst that would pose a real threat to Israel, is considerably less than we have experienced before, and should, in theory, not be too much of a challenge for the Israeli defense systems to handle. It's the real worry in Israel is if they are overwhelmed by a barrage of hundreds or possibly even thousands of missiles, or a sort of a combination which we saw back in April 2024, where it was drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles all hitting at the same time. Back in April 2024, there was forewarning. Iran gave countries around the region a warning that they were going to attack many days. A coalition was put together by Israel, of the Americans, the French and the British, and others to come to Israel's defense. I don't think that coalition exists in the same way this time, although we have seen, we think, some cooperation from Arab states over the course of the day. I suspect the Americans will be involved in the defense. Oh God, there's a... Sorry, you can pick that up.
Alistair, it goes without saying that you need to take care as well and look after your safety and that of your crew as well. We're just looking at live shots now of Tel Aviv. You can see smoke there on the horizon. We know that air raid sirens have been heard across Israel after Iran fired missiles, numerous explosions being heard. And as Alistair was saying there, the Iron Dome, that defence system so far working pretty much effectively, although, as you can see, smoke there on the horizon in Tel Aviv. Let's bring in Zippy Hotavelli, the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. Thanks for your time this evening. I know you've been waiting patiently, watching these images with us. What do you make of what is happening? Iranian ballistic missiles attacking Israel.
Hi, Jonathan. And those are historic days in the Middle East. When Israel made this decision to go to this preemptive strike, it was a decision of self-defense. And I don't think in the modern history, after we've seen the Nazi regime, we've seen a declaration of targeting a specific country and to say that we are going to destroy and eliminate it. This is what Iranians were planning to do. Obviously, with the Nazi regime, it was against the Jewish people, and with the Iranian regime, it's against the Jewish state. And this is something that we take seriously. There is one lesson we have learned from the 7th of October, that when this very radical regime wants to destroy and eliminate Israel, and at the same time its capabilities are getting to the point where they were very, very close to accomplish their nuclear ambitions. And this was exactly the point where the Israeli government had to make an action and had to go and protect the Israeli people. There is no other way to describe it. And we heard today Prime Minister Starmer explains that he supports Israel's right for self-defense, and how much concern the Iranian nuclear program was for the UK government as well.
Have you any more information about the retaliation by Iran? What has been the expectation of, about what they're capable of?
We were definitely expecting this type of retaliation. As you know, in April and in October, Israel was under Iranian attack. And Iran is the one who declared war on Israel. It's quite clear for us to say we are protecting ourselves from this radical regime that is using the most sophisticated ways to hurt both Israel and also the UK people. We heard, by the way, the heads of MI5 and MI6 in the last few months. We had a clear attempt to hurt here in the UK. So
a preemptive strike by Israel. What's the end game, Ambassador? What is going to count as success for Israel? Is it ultimately going to be regime change as well as taking out the nuclear capability?
This is not the aim. The aim is very clear, as our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister are saying. The aim is to make sure Iran won't have nuclear capabilities. This is why all our targets are military targets. This is why we're attacking the nuclear sites. I think it's quite clear what we're doing. We're attacking military targets to make sure that Iran won't be a threat on the Israeli people and on Israel as a country. And we are working very hard. This is not a plan that was created in one night. This is a plan being created in many years from understanding the levels of danger the Iranian
The
regime.
concern is, sorry to interrupt, the concern is that this may push back things by a year, maybe a few years, but ultimately the Iranians have a huge amount of knowledge now. They will rebuild. They'll do it even more secretly, where we know that diplomacy, those talks were progressing.
Well, history has proven different because in 1981, when Israel attacked the nuclear site of Saddam Hussein, you know that this was something that the world, the Americans later on, many years later in the Gulf War, they thanked Israel for doing that. And when we are doing those actions, it's important to say the entire region is looking at Israel and is relieved from the fact that the Iranian regime won't be able to have nuclear weapons. Can you imagine what this regime is capable to do? Look what he's been doing with its proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, all this monstrous program to destroy Israel with invasion, with ballistic missiles. All those things were part of a big master plan that the Iranians were planning. And once they lost their biggest proxy in the region, Hezbollah, they decided to move faster to accomplish their nuclear ambitions. And this was the point where our intelligence was showing the combination of enrichment and the program of weaponization was the moment when we had to stop.
Ambassador, sorry, we're fairly short of time, so apologies again for jumping in. You mentioned Prime Minister Starmer a moment ago saying that Israel has its right to defend itself, of course, but he's also been very clear that both sides here should de-escalate. We know too that the British government have put sanctions on 2 Israeli ministers of late. President Macron talking tonight about a diplomatic solution being the answer. Are you worried about wavering support from the West and from your allies?
Actually, we are fighting the war of the West. What Israel is doing now is a war that all the countries in Europe should thank Israel for doing it, because those ballistic missiles are capable to get to London as well. So we're not just talking about regional threat or a threat just for Israel. We're talking about much more global a threat. And as you know, we were working very closely with our British partners for many years with the very strong cooperation we have on intelligence and defense. And we saw your Royal Air Force participating in this coalition against Iran because your people and your government understand that Iran is a threat to the British people as well.
Did the UK know that these attacks were coming last night?
The first time we had conversations going on was in the midday today. We updated our American friends, and it's important to say that part of the success of this very important action of Israel is the fact that it took the Iranians by surprise. So we were clear about our intentions. We would want to roll back the nuclear program, and unfortunately, because the Iranians were running fast to have nuclear weapons, we were there to stop it.
OK, all right, we must leave it there, but we appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much, Zippy. Thank you very much, Zippy Hotovely, the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. Just updating you on the situation regarding those ballistic missiles that have been heading towards Israel. We have heard in the last few moments from Iran, hundreds of ballistic missiles launched towards Israel, that coming from the state news agency in Tehran. They also say Iran's response to Israel has begun. We're also hearing in the last few moments that Keir Starmer has spoken to President Trump, emphasising the importance of de-escalating the conflict and saying he respected Israel's right to self-defence. That's last few moments apparently from Iron Dome, the defence system that Israel deploys, working successfully at the moment. Citizens across Israel have been told to go to shelters. Alerts and sirens have been sounding across the country. Keeping across the situation in Jerusalem and indeed Tel Aviv, that footage there of smoke rising on the horizon. Well, just 6 months ago, Iran's foreign minister told Sky News that Israel would be crazy to attack its nuclear sites. A lot has changed since then, including a nuclear deal proposed by Washington and a new assessment of how close Iran is to making nuclear bombs. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, has this assessment.
So Israel has finally attacked Iran's nuclear program. It was a massive, sophisticated military operation involving at least 200 fighter jets and thousands of personnel. It's thought to have taken years to plan. The primary target's Iran's nuclear enrichment sites and its ballistic missile program. Blasts were first reported at around 3:30 in the morning in Tehran. Israel's biggest ever operation against Iran was underway. Natanz, a remote location in the desert, which is at the heart of Iran's nuclear program, was among those hit. The global atomic watchdog, the IAEA, says no signs of radiation have yet been detected. Before they did any of this, the Israelis were trying to assassinate the entire top brass of Iran's military and intelligence agencies, most of them in their homes in the dead of night. At least 20 senior commanders are reported dead, from Iran's highest-ranking military officer to the commander-in-chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guards and many others in between. The intention to destabilise Iran's entire command and control elite. So what happens next? Well, Israel says there could be days of this. Iran is, it seems, still weighing its response. It could launch another huge drone and missile barrage against Israel, as it did in October. US intelligence estimates that Iran has more than 3,000 ballistic missiles and has been increasing production. And it has thousands of these Shahad drones, some of which they've already launched against Israel. Exactly how many they have is not clear, but they're much cheaper to produce and often harder to detect. The Iranians could activate their proxies in the region. The Houthis in Yemen, Shia militia groups in Iraq, and a much depleted Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Iran's always warned it could strike back at US bases in the Middle East, highlighted here in places like Qatar, Kuwait and Iraq. The Americans say they weren't involved in the attack, but Iran will not believe them. The Iranians may try and destabilise the oil market by attacking tankers and installations in the Gulf. A fifth of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, around 20 million barrels a day. One of the busiest and most important strategic waterways in the world, would then become a war zone. Donald Trump says Iran could still make a deal and save itself from more Israeli attacks. But so far, the tone from Tehran has been one of defiance.
You're looking at live pictures of Tel Aviv in Israel. Iranian media saying Iran has launched hundreds of missiles towards the country, marking the start of Tehran's response to those Israeli strikes overnight. Dominic is with me in the studio. Dominic, just talk us through what we're looking at here.
Well, this is a dramatic picture. It's the aftermath of one of those ballistic missiles, we assume, that was fired from Iran. The video we've seen on other sources is of a bright orange light flying in from the kind of left-hand corner of this screen and right into what you can see there. That's the base of that column of smoke that is now rising out of. That's right in the centre of Tel Aviv. As I say, this other video showed this missile coming in, hitting with a big explosion, and then it looks like counter-fire, which may well be one of the Iron Dome rockets or the Arrow rockets that goes off, but it's too late to intercept the missile. What we're seeing now is the aftermath of that. So that is, as I say, a column of grey smoke, a big column of smoke, and then that kind of cloud of smoke above it. And that impact came a few minutes ago. And that location, just Jonathan, is right in the middle of Tel Aviv. That blue tower there, if my geography of the city is correct, and I'm pretty sure it is, that is part of the big Kiryat complex. That's the Israeli defence complex. It looks as though the missile landed just to the right of that in the trading centre, just outside that Kiryat. So that would have been a direct hit had it been a little bit closer on Israel's defence headquarters.
So to be completely clear then, we think that this could possibly or could well be a direct hit that has broken through the Iron Dome as opposed to sort of collateral damage from an Iron Dome rocket shooting it out of the sky.
It's very hard to tell, but yes, certainly the video I saw, it looks like a big explosion. And so it's not just the rocket coming in. As you say, so it's very hard to work out exactly what you're seeing when you see this video, because as you say, these Arrow rockets, the Patriot missiles, the Iron Dome rockets go up. If they don't connect, sometimes they come down. But it certainly looked like an incoming. The explosion was certainly consistent with what you're used to seeing when ballistic missiles come into land. So that's what we're seeing in Tel Aviv, and obviously Ali's reporting from Jerusalem, where there's a lot of ballistic missile activity over Jerusalem as well. So finally, the Iranians, it's taken hours for them to retaliate to what Israel did overnight, but they now seem to be launching a major ballistic missile attack on Israel.
And you've described the attack overnight as the big one. Why is that?
Well, I think throughout the recent history of the Middle East, there has been really one question that's been asked more than any other because of this rivalry, this intense rivalry between Israel and Iran, and that's been, would Israel attack Iran and try and destroy its nuclear facilities? Iran is a revolutionary Islamic country. One of the foundational principles of that revolution is being sworn to the destruction of Israel. Iran has been trying to develop the means to fulfill that ambition. Certainly that's how the Israelis see it. The Iranians say their nuclear program is peaceful. The Israelis do not believe that. So the Israelis have always thought that if diplomacy could not counter that threat and neutralise it, they would eventually have to take military action to do so. And so we now know the answer to one part of that question, or one of those questions, what it will look like if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities. The other question, of course, is what it will look like when Iran retaliates. What kind of retaliation, what kind of counterattack will it put in place? I think we're beginning to see the answer to that question tonight.
OK, as you're talking, Dominic, Reuters reporting that the Israeli military is saying explosions heard in Israel are either from interceptions or from impacts. What's going to happen next, do you think?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, certainly from what the Iranians are now saying, and you have to stress that, as I was saying in that report there, the Israelis did the opposite to what we expected. They went after commanders. They went after people, first of all, last night, and they went after at least 20 top members of the Iranian top brass. And that seems to have left the Iranian leadership in considerable disarray. So it's taken them a while to work out how to react to what Israel has done. And so far, they're firing back at Israel. When I spoke to the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, back in January, and I think we can possibly listen to a bit of that, he said, I don't even think about the possibility of Israel attacking Iran because they know that the counterattack would be so fearsome, it would be completely mad. Let's have a listen to what he said back in January.
We have made it clear that any attack to our nuclear facilities would be faced with an immediate and decisive response. But I don't think they will do that crazy thing. This is really crazy. And this would turn the whole region into a very bad disaster.
So just to reiterate, Jonathan, what I was saying in that earlier report is one of the big fears is that they've always said if the Iranian nuclear program was attacked, Iran would attack not just Israel, but American targets, because they regard Israel and America as part of the same threat. And they could wreak havoc in the Persian Gulf, particularly going after oil facilities. We're not seeing that yet, but we are seeing now the Iranians responding to what the Israelis did. This is an escalation. We'll have to see what Israel does in response, because they didn't go after the supreme leader, for instance, last night. They could try and take him out. They've shown that they're very capable of assassinating and killing very high-level Iranian commanders. Were they to do that, we'd see further escalation. So this is a worrying night for the region as Israel now responds or sustains the response from Iran, reacting, retaliating for what Israel did against their nuclear facilities overnight. And the Israelis have said that their operations against Iran could take days, if not weeks, to complete.
OK, Dominic, for the moment, thank you. Just to update you as we look at those live pictures of the Tel Aviv skyline, the Israeli military saying explosions heard in Israel are either from interceptions or from impacts. The Iranian state media is reporting that a second wave now of missiles has been launched towards Israel. So, what will Iran do next? Is its military capacity severely weakened, or are leaders plotting their revenge? Let's bring in Dr. Pua Mirzai, editor-in-chief at the Political Economy Journal. As you look at those images of the skyline in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem as well, what goes through your mind?
Thank you very much for the time you devoted to me. Actually, to tell the truth, what is going on into my mind is not very important at this moment. I was putting away my earphone because I heard the Iranian air defense right now at the moment working and fighting with the Zionists. I think quadcopters. So the point is that Israel started this war against Iran, but I'm pretty sure that they will understand it was a kind of a strategic mistake. And as your colleague mentioned, second wave of Iranian retaliation started by launching missiles toward the occupied lands of Israel.
Israel says it's taken this action because they felt that an Iranian attack was imminent and they had to take this preemptive action in order to protect themselves.
They have said lots of things during the past week. At some moments they said that Iran is near to produce nuclear weapons, and then they said Iran is going to attack. Iran was at the middle of a conducting diplomacy and negotiation with the United States, and Israel is not whole world. Israel is not United Nations. Zionists, they couldn't teach us about what is right or what is wrong, or what the other countries should do or what they should not do. This is the point. The problem is that they feel that they could dictate, but I'm pretty sure that Iran will learn them a kind of lesson that they are not in a position to make such excuses for attacking residential, completely civilian areas in Tehran.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do that the IAEA has said that Iran is in non-compliance with its regulations, undeclared uranium traces at 3 sites. Iran, of course, has a right to a nuclear program for civilian purposes, for energy and the like. The problem is the regime has secretly carried out programs for weapons.
It's completely lying, The Grossi has repeated, he has been here in Iran. I think in the past month, he was here for 2 or 3 times. And how they find a new document, suddenly out of blue. And, they said these 3, I think, places that they claim was belonging to the 25 years ago. And, we know that the International Atomic Energy Agency...
You genuinely believe Tehran is not planning to build a nuclear weapon?
Definitely, because Iran has repeated it lots of times. Iranian officials, Iranian president, Iranian supreme leader, Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs, we call it Secretary of State or something. They have repeatedly mentioned that we do not have any military program, nuclear program. We are seeking civilian or peaceful or non-military nuclear program. We are
do you think Tehran...
a member. Yes, I think Tehran is telling the truth. Yes, I think.
Yeah, my apologies for interrupting. I do apologise. I was just going to ask you if Tehran, you think, might attack American bases in the Middle East. Is this going to escalate?
I don't know at the moment if Tehran is going to attack the American bases or not, but the point is that, Donald Trump has changed his narration during the past 48 hours. He started with saying that I'm against any Israeli attack to Iran, and then today we could see that he's clapping for them, and he says, "Okay, thank you very much. You have murdered some of the personals that were negotiating with me." You know, he's a little bit like a crazy man. We don't know if it proves that the United States have helped them directly to attack Iran. There may be this possibility.
OK, we're going to leave it there. Dr. Pooya Mizai, Editor-in-Chief, Political Economy Journal, thank you very much. We're going to return to the situation in Tel Aviv. We know that numerous missiles have been fired from Iran in the last 40 minutes or so. The Israeli military saying that numerous explosions have been heard, which may be due either to those missiles impacting with buildings or with the ground in Israel, or alternatively explosions caused by the Iron Dome Patriot missiles firing the Iranian ballistic missiles out of the sky. Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Jerusalem monitoring the situation. The Iranians, Ali, in the last few minutes, saying that a second barrage has been launched.
Yeah, we're just watching more Israeli interceptors going into the skies. The sirens are sounding, or the thud there of an interception. The sirens are sounding further north, around the Galilee area and close to Haifa in the north of Israel. No sirens here at the moment, but we can see more interceptors going into the skies, and it looks like this is a second wave of ballistic missiles being fired from Iran at Israel. So the response that we have been expecting all day now clearly underway. The Iranian regime, I think, had been reeling from the attacks that Israel launched on the country in the early hours of the morning and then throughout the day, but now seems to be showing its defiance and its response as everybody was expecting. A massive streak of light in the air now. We saw about half an hour ago when the first round came in, we've seen impacts in central Tel Aviv. Now, for those unfamiliar, the seat of Israel's parliament, the Knesset, is in Jerusalem, as are most of the government ministries. But the Ministry of Defense is based in central Tel Aviv. So it might be that that was the target of the Iranian missiles. We're unsure exactly where they've impacted in Tel Aviv. I've seen reports of several people being described as lightly injured and some damage to buildings. But I tell you what, even if the Iranians say that they were targeting a military installation in Tel Aviv, and the intelligence agencies, okay, I think we're about to get sirens here in Jerusalem. I think the Israelis will see that as an attack on a civilian center. Tel Aviv, a major populated city, of course. And I think the Israelis will consider it an attack on their population center, and that could be the trigger for an escalation in this conflict. They have threatened the Israelis this afternoon to attack Iran's oil refineries, for example, if Iran attacks. Oh, big flash of light there in the sky. And I can see, sorry to break off from what I was saying, but I can see 7, 8, 9 missiles in the skies above me. Now, I think these are incoming missiles, and they are heading west over Jerusalem towards Tel Aviv. But as they come down towards the ground, they start to come down very rapidly. You can hear the sirens now here in central Jerusalem as this second wave of Iranian missiles come in. So Iran clearly still has, despite everything that it has endured today, it has the ability still to attack Israel. How much capability they have, we're unclear. Certainly, Israel has spent a lot of the day trying to target Iranian ballistic missile sites. We've seen video footage of Mossad covert operations in Iran in the early hours of this morning, firing drones that they had stockpiled undercover in Iran at ballistic missile launchers. So the Israelis will have damaged. Okay, the sirens are now increasing their intensity. The Israelis will have damaged Iran's capability to respond, but they clearly have not eliminated it. And this has been the warning all day. There's been a sort of an uneasy period of calm here after those first attacks were launched overnight. But the warning from military officials all day is don't relax, don't be fooled. Iran is still expected to respond, and that is what's happening now. And I'm just going to let you hear the constant rattle of interceptions.
Well, as we listen to those air raid sirens, Alistair, and we hear the rumble and thud of those explosions in the background, I'm going to bring in Simon Gass, former British ambassador to Iran. When you look at this footage, you look at these scenes in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as well, what's your reaction?
Well, I think this is exactly what Israel will have expected when it took military action against Iran. The Israeli Defense Forces have been warning the Israeli people that they need to stay close to shelters, that there was likely to be an Iranian response. We'll have to wait, of course, to see how much damage has been caused, and there are still a large number of unknowns, one of which is this the only Iranian response, or on the assumption that Israel continues to conduct strikes against Iran in the coming days, are we going to see more of this sort of thing? So it's a very uncertain and very dangerous situation.
Indeed. And what do you make of the timing of this, that strike last night, especially as we understand the nuclear deal talks were due to continue?
Well, that's right. I mean, I think Israel has for many months become increasingly frustrated, has been planning this operation and has been straining at the leash to be allowed to strike Iran's military and nuclear capability. That is partly because they are concerned about progress in Iran's nuclear program. It's partly because they think that Iran is at the moment more vulnerable than it has been in recent years, partly because of the decapitation of Lebanese Hezbollah, the sweeping away of the Assad regime in Syria, and the destruction by Israel of part of its air defense. So it thought Israel that Iran was in a weak position, and it wanted to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, and they're doing so despite the UN, Western leaders, including our Prime Minister, President Macron as well tonight, all calling for de-escalation, accepting that Israel has the right to defend itself, but saying that both sides here need to step back.
Well, I think that's obviously correctly put. Both sides do need to step back, but I don't think Israel is going to do so until it's met its goals for the operation, which are clearly significantly degrading Iran's nuclear capability and its long-range strike ability, particularly in the form of ballistic missiles and drones, and the killing of a number of Iran's military leaders is consistent with that and is rather similar to what Israel did to Lebanese Hezbollah last year. I mean, it's just worth recalling as we think about this and as Western leaders call for restraint, that they are probably also thinking to themselves that if the United States had stuck with the Iran nuclear deal that we negotiated in 2015 and which Israel lobbied against consistently, then we would be in a position in which Iran simply would not have the nuclear capability which it has today, because it would have been highly restricted and there would have been a very intrusive international monitoring regime. So Western leaders outside the United States and Israel may also be thinking that an opportunity was missed to have avoided this eventuality.
Yes, you do make a very good point. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying earlier today that that these were unilateral strikes by Israel, really making a point to say that. What's your thinking then of where President Trump stands on this action?
Well, as we've seen pretty consistently, really, since President Trump was inaugurated, the administration is saying rather different things through different voices. So I completely understand why the US Secretary of State wants to make clear that this was not a US backed or led operation. I'm not sure that Iran will believe that, but it is obviously the case that the United States wants to avoid suffering strikes from Iran against US facilities, so that is understandable. President Trump, though, speaking later in the day, has sounded rather more belligerent in his approach and appears to be backing Israel, even if US military support is not obvious at present.
And just a final thought on where you think this may go next. I mean, are we looking at regime change here? Are we looking at boots on the ground? Or do you think it'll be short, sharp and over in a few days?
Well, I don't think we're talking about regime change. I mean, nothing can be ruled out, of course, but there is no indication at the moment that that is on the cards. One thing which I always found when I was talking to Iranians back in the day was that however much they might dislike their own regime, one thing they were clear on, and that was that they didn't want Americans or Israelis or anybody else deciding their political future for them. So I don't think that that is likely, nor do I think that this is going to result in boots on the ground. I think that Iran is likely to be careful not to hit American targets so as not to bring United States military power down in on its head. I think it also probable that Iran will therefore avoid trying to disrupt oil traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. But these are extraordinary times where Iran will be angry, scared and desperate not to show weakness, which it thinks will be exploited by its enemies. So it is very difficult to forecast exactly how Iran will respond.
Of course. Well, we really appreciate your input tonight. Former British Ambassador to Iran, Simon Gass, thank you. Let's bring in Olli Heinonen, former Deputy Director of the International Atomic Energy Agency, who oversaw the organisation's efforts to monitor and contain Iran's nuclear programme during his time there. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. What's your understanding about how much damage Israel's strikes have done on that nuclear programme?
Thank you very much for having me. Well, this depends on the satellite imagery which we get in next few days. Let's not forget that this is day number 1, and they have focused on certain targets. I mean, Israel has focused the targets which it sees the most important, but that will be not all. And we now see that this goes for the second night, so there will be perhaps more events to come. But the way I see those places which were attacked by Israel, they are important points for Iran's nuclear program, including the leadership, including the communications. So that's why we had this pause, so practically 24 hours before Iran was able to respond. But this is not over by this, by far not. When I look the information which is available in public, there's also a lot of information on those nuclear installations which are not in public, and we don't know exactly which prompted a certain day of the attack. There is more to come, and I think that now it is pretty much on the Iranian corner to think, should they would like to have a pause on this and get to the serious negotiation, yes or no, or let the people take a little bit more shots and look how the international community and supporters of the US and Israel deal with this.
An Israeli spokesman has said today that Iran had enough nuclear material to create nuclear bombs within days. Is that possible, do you think?
Yes, with certain assumptions. First of all, material is there. IAEA has confirmed it. Quite a big number for a dozen nuclear weapons if you want to enrich it higher. I don't think that they can use under these circumstances Natanz to do the final step to produce 90% enriched uranium. I also saw earlier this night that there were attacks in Fordo. You can write it off. But then comes the but. And we go back to the year 2004 when Iran decided to build a secret facility in Fordo. Do they actually have one more facility somewhere, which we don't know, intelligence doesn't know, or if they know, they probably are waiting to see what takes place there. And where is the uranium? I don't think IAEA is sitting on top of it at this point of time.
No. But they have a huge amount of knowledge now, don't they? They've built up a huge amount of expertise. How quickly could Iran recover from this? Are we talking a year or two? Are we talking decades? It'll never stop the threat completely, will it?
That's true. It depends how they have prepared for this. When I read the statements of my old friend Ambassador Salehi or maybe Minister Karashi, I'm a bit worried because they have been prepared to a situation where it goes actually back to the situation which was at the end of the World War II when US wanted to or planned to attack Japan with the nuclear weapons. Have they done everything what is needed? And the only thing which is missing is actually the chips of fissile, machined, high-enriched uranium from the weapon. The rest is in place. Electronics, explosives, missile to deliver it, everything tested, done some cold testing to see whether it works. If they are on that stage, then it goes back to the very beginning of or very basics of the IAEA safeguards verification. There is a reason why the IAEA has set the time limits for high-enriched uranium. It's 1 month. In 1960s, the weapon states felt that one can produce a nuclear weapon in 1 month time. That's where we are.
OK. We really appreciate your time and listening to your expertise. Olli Heinonen, former Deputy Director of the IAEA, thank you very much. Just to update you on the situation, we're hearing that the Prime Minister spoke to the President of the United States earlier this evening. The leaders discussed the military action in the Middle East overnight and agreed on the importance of diplomacy and dialogue. Meanwhile, we're hearing from the Iranian state media that a third barrage, a third wave of missiles is on its way to Israel. Air raid sirens have sounded across the country as Iranian missiles struck Israel in retaliation for that deadly Israeli airstrike overnight on nuclear sites, military leaders, nuclear scientists as well. The rumble of explosions could be heard throughout Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as footage showed plumes of smoke rising from the ground after an apparent missile strike in Tel Aviv itself. No immediate reports of casualties. As this special programme comes to a close, let's join once again our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle. So, Alistair, we're hearing from Iran, I'm just having a look now, that a third wave now of missiles is heading towards Israel.
Well, in the last 45 minutes or so, we've had 2 waves of ballistic missiles. I think collectively hundreds of ballistic missiles fired at Israel. We have seen multiple interceptions close to and around the Jerusalem skyline. You're looking at it now. It is all quiet at the moment, but we are on alert for a third wave of Iranian ballistic missiles to come in to Israeli airspace. A number of those missiles in the first wave managed to impact in Tel Aviv, one of Israel's largest cities. It is the location of the Israeli Ministry of Defense. It's unclear what the target was. There are reports that some people have been lightly injured. No reports of severe injuries at this stage, but also reports that a number of buildings have been damaged. Now, No word yet from the Iranians. They might argue that they were attacking the Ministry of Defense, therefore a military installation in Tel Aviv. But it is an attack, I'm sure, in Israel's eyes on a major civilian center. And I think that is likely to trigger a further escalation. Israel had warned Iran that if they target civilian centers, then they would escalate. They would widen the scope of their attacks on Iran to potentially include political figures and Iran's oil refineries as well, so important to the Iranian economy. So we're awaiting potentially a third wave of ballistic missiles fired from Iran to Israel. All day, Israelis have been awaiting the response from Iran after those attacks began, launched by the Israeli Air Force in the early hours of this morning, and now it seems we are witnessing the Iranian response. It has just gone 10 o'clock here in Jerusalem, 8 o'clock in London, after a very long, tense and busy day in the Middle East. It began shortly after 3 a.m. with waves of airstrikes, 200 Israeli aircraft taking off at the same time, conducting in an initial wave more than 100 strikes against Iranian targets, including their nuclear facilities, their ballistic missile sites, and key military personnel in the Iranian chain of command. Throughout the day, Israel has continued to attack targets across Iran, including some of its main nuclear bases. We have also learnt of a covert Mossad operation that took place concurrently as those first wave of strikes were happening. They had smuggled drones into the country, which they then launched at air defenses and ballistic missile sites. The Iranian regime has vowed to respond harshly, and tonight we have witnessed some of what they have threatened. Hundreds of ballistic missiles fired so far in 2 waves at Israel. A third wave reportedly underway as millions across this country have been sent for a second night to shelters and bunkers as this Iranian response continues.
Alistair, thank you. I want to bring you more now on the breaking news tonight as Iran has launched retaliatory attacks against Israel. It comes after Israel has defended what it called preempted strikes on military and nuclear targets in Iran, claiming the Tehran regime posed a danger to its very survival. Well, Israel has struck military and nuclear targets in Iran, with local media reporting that at least 78 people had been killed and more than 300 injured. Iran's supreme leader warned of severe punishment for the strikes. And in Washington, President Trump warned Tehran in the strongest possible words to make a nuclear deal, but threatened what he called further brutal action if there was no agreement. This was the scene as missiles struck Tel Aviv in the last hour.